Peg Keough here from College Aid Pro. Today, what I'm going to do is walk you through the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. So we're going to go through this form pretty much line by line so that you're very acquainted with it, and then you can easily submit it. So the first thing you need to do to submit the FAFSA is you're going to need what's called a federal student aid ID. So the student needs the ID, and also the parent that's submitting the form with the student will need their own ID. So if you're married, only one parent needs to get the ID. If you're divorced, the custodial parent needs to get the ID. So that's the parent where the student is spending the most time with. And so that parent needs to get the ID. And these IDs are used to electronically submit the FAFSA. So you can't submit the FAFSA without them. If you haven't done this yet, definitely go in and take care of this. It can take a couple days to process. The easiest way to get there is just Google FSA ID, create FSA ID. You'll get to the page and go ahead and take care of that. So jump on that right away if you haven't done it yet, so that by the time you get through the FAFSA, you've got those and you can submit. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share my screen and we're going to walk through this process. So let me turn off my video and let's get started. So you're on, if you go to FAFSA.gov, if you go to FAFSA.gov, it'll redirect to this page. And you choose what's applicable to you. If you're new to the FAFSA, haven't submitted it before, then you're going to click up here. If you have an older student and you're going back in, because this is required to be submitted every year at colleges, then go there. We're going to go here so that I can walk people through that haven't been through this before. So you see here, you can log in as the student and you can use the FSA ID, or you can log in as the parent. I'm going to do that, but you definitely do whichever one you like. But because I don't have the FSA ID right now, we're going to go in as the parent. This last one is if you're a preparer. And I've had a few parents through the years are like, well, I'm helping. So they click that and that messes things up. So you're either the student or the parent. So let's go in as the parent. So I'm going to make up our student here. Okay, and then put in a birthday. Okay, and then the social security number. So you're going to need to have that handy for your child to get in here. Okay, so now we're here. Hit continue. There's an agreement you can review and that you'll need to sign. Okay, so what we are submitting and walking through today is the 2023-2024 FAFSA. This is the one that went live on 10/1, October 1st, 2022. So we're going to click here to get in. And they require something called the save key. So when you go in the first time, you're going to make up your save key. This could be a word that's meaningful to you, a combination of letters and numbers, whatever you want. But you're going to need to write that down because you're going to need that every time you log in. So here we are. This is just a question kind of FAQs page. You can click on those if you're interested in any of those. So now we're in the FAFSA. And if you look along here, here's kind of the bar. This is kind of the journey we're on here in the form, and it ends at sign and submit, okay? So this is just a rehash of what I already put in for the student. Then we're going to put in an email. And this is the student's email, okay? And this is important because they might communicate with the student, and often do, the colleges, through the email. So get that in there correct. And then you just can put in whatever, I'm just making stuff up here. Put in a state. This is just, basic stuff here. Okay. Have you lived at that address? If yes or no, whatever that is, and then pick your status. If you're a citizen, eligible non-citizen, or neither. Then they're going to ask you some questions. This is all about the student, so student education. So I'm going to pick the most common answers, but there are different options, okay? High school diploma. This is going to be the first bachelor's degree. You haven't gotten a degree before then. What's the grade level? Never attended college. But again, look at all the answers. If you're coming in second time, the answers will be different, okay? I'm doing this for a first time putting it in. Are you interested in considering work study? This is a very important question to answer yes to. Even if you're not sure, you don't think you want to, just answer yes, because then you will have the option if you're eligible for it. And a lot of kids are not eligible for it. So just mark yes there so you have the option. You're not obligated to do work study and you're not guaranteed a job. So just mark yes there so you have all your options open. This question is not required. So my take on financial aid forms and all of us at College Aid Pro is less is more. Be honest, provide what they ask, but don't overshare. So it's your form, your choice, but this is not required. So I wouldn't put it in there. And your child might not have a driver's license anyways. If you want to skip something and you're not allowed to, it will be very clear to you because there'll be a big red box and you'll have to provide. So you'll know. Has the student been in foster care? Say no. That one you want to answer no if that's the case. And you don't have to give the education background of parent 1 and 2. So I would skip that. Now we're in where they want to know about the high school. So you pick your state. Okay. And then the easiest way to get there is just to type in the high school name and hit search. And then you're going to you might get more than one. In this case, you're not. And you just pick it and hit continue. So you're good to go there. It gives you a confirmation page. Now we're into colleges. So you can submit up to 10 colleges at once on the FAFSA. If your child's applying to 13 schools, then you're going to have to submit the FAFSA once with the 10, let it process, go back in, delete the 10, and submit to the other 3. That's the process. So let's add in one school. So I'm going to pick Idaho. Again, the easiest thing to do here is just to type in the name of the college and hit search. That way you're kind of honing it in to hopefully not get a huge list. We're going to pick College of Idaho. Then they're going to ask if you're living on campus with parents off campus, pick the applicable answer. And then here you have more schools, you're going to add them. I'm just going to show you how to do it for one school. So we're going to move on. Okay, so now we're into part 3, dependency status. So this is all about the student. So this student is single. Of course, you're going to pick the applicable answer. I'm going to go through and have this student be a dependent. That's more common. Independent means that the student doesn't have to provide the parent's financial information. But I'm going to mark no to all these dependency questions. But if any of these are yes in your situation, then read through them and click appropriately. But I'm going to do none of the above so I can give you the full layout here of the FAFSA. The student was not homeless. So they're saying, okay, the way you answered the dependency questions means that you will have to provide, are you willing to provide information about your parents? And if you click no, you're going to get a message that says you're going to have to reach out to the schools individually. This could affect your aid. So if you're planning on providing it, just leave that box there clicked because it's going to default to that. Then we're getting to another page. Whose information should I provide? Here's another kind of FAQs page. If you're divorced or separated, the custodial parent, which is the parent that the child spent the most time with on a year look back from when you're submitting the forms, that's the custodial parent. That's the definition for the 2023-2024 school year. So that's who should be submitting it. But if any of these are applicable, go ahead and click on them and you can get more information directly from FAFSA. So done with the student. Now we're on parent demographics. So as of today, what's the status of the parents? Just whichever one is applicable, click. When did the parents get married? Go ahead and put that in. Continue. Now you're going to need to supply, just putting in numbers here. the parent's information, first initial of the first name. And you want to remember who's parent one and who's parent two, because you're going to have to provide financial information. So kind of keep track of that in your mind if you need to jot it down. And then parent email address. This is important because, again, they're going to communicate with the student and potentially the parent. So you want to have a good email address in there. Okay, and now they're asking for the other parent. Okay, and last name Smith, first initial. This is pretty self-explanatory. You plug all that in. Same question, have the parents lived at their address? Yes, they have. Now, this is an important question here. They're asking about dependents. So read through this question. Include how many other dependent children do the parents have? So dependent, they define it here. You must be providing half of their financial support between this time frame. So there's one sibling, you can put one there. Then they're asking about other dependents, like if grandma or grandpa lives in the home and you're providing over half their support, then you would put it here. I'm going to put a 0, but whatever's applicable to your family. And that's really important because that can very much affect your financial aid eligibility. So you want to make sure you get that in there correctly. And if you see here, then it tells you your household size is 4, the student, the sibling, and both parents. If you look at that and say, oops, I forgot something, you can always go back to previous. So until you submit this, you can go back in and edit. So don't worry if you made a mistake and you need to go back. This next question is important as well, number in college. So it's exactly what it says. If you have twins and you're going to be doing 2 FAFSAs, 2 separate FAFSAs, then you would put 2 here. For this family, it's 1. And you see that here they say, if one of the parents is in school, you can't include parents. This has to be the dependents in the household. So 1 in college. Okay. So it's saying here you need to provide information for your parents. So now we've jumped from parent demographics to parent financials. So we're going to just follow through. It's saying, did you complete your taxes? So we'll say already filed, whatever is applicable, you pick. So already completed, what form? Did a 1040, and we filed married filing jointly. Okay. So now we're here. Now you see down here that something called the IRS data retrieval tool. We call it DRT for short. What this is this is a way for the FAFSA to import information from the IRS into your FAFSA. So some people like to do this. There's pros and cons of using the DRT. One, I will tell you that sometimes it doesn't work. So if it doesn't work and you wanted to use it, don't get frustrated. You're just going to need to manually enter it. And I'm going to show you how to do that because it can be finicky. If what you've plugged into the FAFSA doesn't perfectly match a tax return, it might not work. So don't worry about it if it doesn't. Families that I work with, I routinely will say, especially if they have need-based aid eligibility, hey, don't use the data retrieval tool the first time in, manually enter it. And the main reason that I say that is, and I want you to know this before you use the DRT, is if you use it, the data that gets imported says transferred from the IRS. It doesn't give you your income that you imported. So if you get to the end and you have an expected family contribution that you don't think is correct, you can't see the numbers that were used to calculate that. And so it's difficult for me when I'm helping families to support them because I can't see the numbers. Also, if you need to make changes to income, you can't log in and just make them. So it's totally up to you. A lot of people love using this. They don't want to deal with plugging in those numbers. So it's your call. That's just my take on it. Other members at the College Aid Pro team use it all the time. One of the big perks of using it is families, a certain percentage of families are what's called verified, which means after you submit forms, the college reaches out to you and says, hey, we need either a tax transcript or we need a copy of your tax return, and they're checking what you put in. If you use the DRT, you're less likely to be verified. So that's a big positive of the DRT. So Totally up to you how you want to do it. I'm going to go through the manual so that people can see how to do it. Okay, so we'll click here. Then they always say, you sure you don't want to use it? You hit no thanks. This is where you're actually plugging in the data. So you need your 2021 tax return, your 1040. You also need your W-2s. And for your student, if your student also submitted a tax return. So just follow what it says here. Your AGI, your adjusted gross income, is on line 11. So I'm going to plug in a number there. Then they're asking what parents made from work. So this is from wages. If you're self-employed, you might have different boxes as well. For a lot of people, this is line 1 of your 1040. And if you're married, line 1 is both of your wages combined. So you're going to need to break them out by parent. And remember which parent you had as parent 1 and parent 2 so you don't get mixed up. So I'm going to put in some figures here. We'll just make them both make the same amount. But just read the italics here. If you have a Schedule 1 and you have something on line 3, that means you have a sole proprietorship. That number needs to be included here. So there's always really good instructions here. So make sure you click on that. There's also question marks. So if you're still kind of confused, click on that question mark. But there you go. So there's the earnings. You fill that in, and then they want line 22. They want to know how much federal income tax you paid. So go to line 22 on your 1040, plug that in. Then we've got additional questions here. These may or may not be applicable to you. So just read through them. Combat pay, college grant and scholarship aid, reported to the IRS as parents' income if you have education credits, untaxed portions of IRA distributions. This is a big one, and it says here in bold, exclude rollover. So if you had a 401k from an old employer and you rolled it over to a new employer plan, or you rolled it over into what's called an IRA rollover account, you're not going to want to include that here. And I will say that if you're using the data retrieval tool, there's a box that you need to check if you had a rollover, because it's not going to know that that's an excludable rollover. It's going to include it as your income, which is another challenge with the DRT. So if that rings a bell, I'm just trying to bring your attention to that, to really look at your tax return around rollovers that were not taxable events. Also here, this one can be applicable to a lot of people. If you have IRA deductions or you have a simple or Keough plan, that doesn't ring a bell. Don't worry about it. That means it's not applicable to you. Look at the lines on the tax return that they're referencing. Same thing for tax exempt interest. These are things that you get a tax deduction for, or they're not taxable by the federal government, but in financial aid, they're going to add them back. So they want to know about them. So fill in whatever's applicable there. Then we're on to additional financial information. If you paid child support, disclose it here. Earnings from work under a co-op program or at work study or anything. And remember, we're under parent additional information. We're not talking about student. So this is all applicable to the parents. And if they don't break it out, parent 1 and parent 2, and both parents have it, just combine the number and put it on the line. Okay, now we are talking about untaxed income. So this concept is a purely financial aid concept. This is income. This is money you received that the federal government doesn't tax. But again, in the financial aid world, they're going to add it back in. So if you receive child support, whatever you receive for that tax year, put there. If you're a pastor and you have a living allowance, you need to disclose what that was. This is all for the 2021 tax year only. If you are saving pre-tax through your employer, which is very common for retirement, and it just gets pulled out of your paycheck, goes into your 401k, 403b, you have a W-2, and that number is designated on the W-2. So as the instructions say, get your W-2, look in box 12, look for the codes that are listed here, and it'll have the code and a dash and a number. If you don't have those codes, or as it says here, you have a code DD, don't include anything except those codes, the D, E, F, G, H, and S. All the other codes are not something you would disclose. But again, this is all listed right here. So don't stress about it, just follow the instructions. And then a couple other categories here. these are applicable to you, then you need to include the amounts, and you can always click on the question mark for more info. Okay, now we're into parent assets. Now, the only assets that you are going to report on the FAFSA are non-retirement assets. That's one of the biggest mistakes that families make, is including balances in a 401k or 403b or Roth IRA or an IRA. Those are all retirement accounts, so you don't want to be including those, okay? So first question, what's in checking and savings? So I'm going to say, okay, this family has about $5,000. Then the next question is net worth of parents' investments. So what this is going to include is any accounts you have that are non-retirement, like I said, as well as real estate. So if you have real estate that's not part of a business and it's not your primary home, so the home you live in is your primary home, that is completely excluded on the FAFSA. You should not be disclosing anything. But if you have other real estate, like you have a vacation home, you have vacant land, anything like that, you need to take the value of that minus any liabilities. So if you have a mortgage or a HELOC or both on a home, you would take that out and get the lowest defensible market value for that property. It's honest, but it's the lowest value. And typically you can take off about 15 to 20% off of that number. That's your market value. You subtract your liabilities from it, and that's going to be put in here. So say you have 20,000 in, stocks and bonds, and then you have a property that you have 100,000 of equity in. That would be 120,000. The other number you're going to include here is if you have 529s where the parent is the owner, not the grandparent. If you're divorced, not the non-custodial parent, only the parent that's submitting the FAFSA. And this is a very common mistake as well. People tend to put these as a student asset because the parent is typically the owner and the student is the beneficiary. But this is considered a parent asset. And you don't want to make this mistake because parent assets are looked at a much lower percentage to go into the EFC calculation than students. So remember, if you own 529s for any of your kids, if you have 2 kids in 529s, you have to disclose both of them. You can appeal to have the one removed down the road, but you need to disclose 529s that you own, any non-retirement assets, and any equity in real estate outside of your primary home that is not in a business. So I'm just going to put here for this family, let's just put 50,000, okay? If you have a business and it's family owned with less than 100 full-time employees, in this third question, you will put the value of that. You will not disclose the value of that business if it's family owned and less than 100 full-time employees. If it isn't, then you have to figure out the valuation and you have to share it, right? If you have 2 partners, then it's not family owned. If they're not family, then you would need to disclose it. A lot of businesses that people have fall under the small business exclusion. This is the value of the business. So realize some businesses have no resale value. If you're a consultant and God forbid something happens to you, your business isn't worth anything on the market. So if your business value is 0, just put 0. Don't feel like you're doing something wrong. You don't have to have a value there if there isn't a value. And if you fall under the small business exclusion, then you're putting 0. So that's the business. Okay, now we are moving to student financial. So you see up here, we're in number 6. So you're going to know, this is going to be very familiar. We're going to go through it quickly, but it's pretty much all the same questions, right? And so I'm going to pick a different answer here because a lot of students don't file. So we're going to say not going to file, okay? The DRT is not an option because you didn't file a return, you can't import. If your child filed a tax return and you want to use the DRT, then you would pick the corresponding choice up here, and then the DRT would be available. But I want to show this because a lot of students don't necessarily file returns. So they did a little work, babysitting or whatever, and they made $1,000. Just put down what your child earned. Then you're going to see these are all the same questions that you were asked as a parent. Most of these are going to be 0 for a lot of kids. But for some kids, when they get into college, if they're in a co-op program at their college, or your child was awarded federal work study through need-based aid, you're going to want to make sure you put that for that tax year because it will get backed out of their income and won't be included in the EFC calculation. So that's important. If you have a student already in college, don't just whiz through these if these are applicable. You want to make sure you look at each question carefully to see if it's applicable to your family. Here's the untaxed income questions that we talked about. It's all the same question. So the things that are biggies for parents, most kids they're not saving in a 401k. So this third one is not applicable. Just go through. I want to draw your attention to this last one that we did not see on the parent untaxed income. So money received or paid on your behalf, not reported elsewhere on this form. This includes money received from a parent or other person whose financial information is not included. So this is common with divorce if the non-custodial parent is providing support on top of child support and it's recurring. Like if it's a one-off, here's some money for a gift, that's different. What they're talking about here is some people are living with people who are paying their electric bills or buying them food. If it's something that's consistent and recurring, that's what they're looking for there. And that's a question unique on the student financials that you don't see. Then we've got the same questions here for the student. They've got some money in checking and savings. And by the way, if you have an account with your child, and because they're a minor, your name is on it and their name is on it, you can split that account 50-50. So if there's $1,000 in there, it would be 500 for your net worth of assets or your checking and savings and 500 for the student. So just keep that in mind, depending on the registration of the account. We're going to put 0 here. And remember, you do not put 529s that the student is a beneficiary of here. It's only if the student owns the 529, which is pretty rare. Usually the parents own it or somebody else owns it. And then we're going to just say the student doesn't have a business. So same questions. Okay. So now we're getting to the end here. So the following errors have occurred. So this is great. Let's look here. This is perfect. Because I put the same earnings for mom and dad here, or the two parents, they're wanting to make sure, hey, did you make a mistake, Peg? Because these are exactly the same. That's great. Nope, I did it right. They both had 45,000 in wages, so we move on. So that's perfect. That actually popped up. I didn't plan that. Okay, so now we are on the FAFSA summary page. So this is great. I always tell people, review this, go through the whole thing, and you can print the page. You can print a PDF, or if you want to print it, I'm a big, have a low carbon footprint person. But sometimes it's really good if you're not up against a deadline to, save this and look at it the next day, or have your partner look at it, just somebody else, just to make sure nothing pops out like, oh, what was I thinking when I put that number? That's not right. Just to review it. So it's up to you how you want to review it, but definitely look through it. You've got all the answers to all the questions we just went through together. Once you've done that, and you can hit continue. This is new this year where they're asking some questions about you. Totally up to you if you want to answer these. I'm just going to click through decline to answer, your choice of how you want to handle that. Then we're on the final page here. We're in the last step here, sign and submit. This is where they're going to ask you to proceed to the signature page. Okay. So you're going to have to provide signatures for the parents. And we are not going to be able to go to the next step. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on my video again here, and I'm going to stop my share. So what's going to happen after that, because I'm not going to go through the whole deal, and actually I can't submit it, right? Because I made up the parents and the student, but just follow the prompts. If you log in with the FSA ID, it's going to come to a page. The student will have already been logged in with that. They have to accept terms and agreements, and then it's going to say, please electronically sign. Then it's going to go to the parent, and it's going to say, put in your FSA ID and password and terms and conditions, click that you've reviewed them and you're good with them, and submit. After you hit submit, you're going to get a confirmation page. What you want to do is capture that page, print it. What's going to be on there is a confirmation number, which is awesome and important to have, right? In case a college comes back and says, hey, we didn't get your form by the deadline, you can say, oh, well, yes, I did submit it, because on that page, it's going to have a confirmation number. It's going to have your expected family contribution. So you'll be able to see it. And hopefully you've done planning ahead of time and you've looked at estimates of your EFC. And if it doesn't look close to what you thought it would be, that's something to maybe get some help on or dig into that. It's also going to list the colleges that you sent it to. So capture that and keep it. Throw it in your college file with all this other stuff you're saving, because that's your proof. You potentially will get an email with that information as well, but definitely capture that, because a lot of people are so excited to be done with their FAFSA that they just close out of that browser and they're like, yay. Capture that, just capture it, and it's very easy to do. Again, like I said earlier, if you have more than 10 schools, your child has more than 10 schools, you're going to let it process. And then you can go back in and delete those 10 and submit the other schools that you need to send it to. And you're going to follow the same process. Save your confirmation page for the rest of those schools as well. Once your FAFSA is processed, your student's FAFSA, what's going to be created is something called a student aid report. We call it a SAR for short. You can log in with your child into their FAFSA and you can see the student aid report. One thing I would recommend that everybody does, just proactively, it's free and just get it so you have it in case you need it, is request a tax transcript. So you can Google request tax transcript. Make sure when you look at that URL, when you Google it, you're on the IRS site, because there could be fraudulent sites out there, who knows, because you have to provide your social security number and really confidential information, but you can request that online, because if you do get verified, that's something you can provide. It's an official report of your tax return. So if you have that, then you're not going to be stressed about waiting to get it if a college verifies you and you need it. So that's just being proactive. And you know what? Murphy's Law, if you request it, you probably never need it, right? But at least you've got it and you're good to go. So that's the FAFSA. You should have all the tools to go ahead and get that submitted. And good luck with that. And as always, happy planning.